Right friends, welcome back to English comprehension and vocabulary. Today is 18th session and we are going to deliberate as announced yesterday, align banks' interest with those of bankers, and on Monday we are going to deliberate on Economic Times editorial of today, that is, let us not rush into more bank mergers. 5 associate banks are going to be merged with the State Bank of India. Cabinet took the decision, and in this context today editorial of the Economic Times is cautious about further bank mergers. So, this we are going to deliberate on Monday, and today the discussion is align banks' interest with those of bankers. Who is bank? What is a banker? Banker means in this present context the top management of banks. Banker, that means this editorial was written in the backdrop of there was some talk of giving more and more performance based incentives to top management of public sector banks. Performance based incentives, if the bank's profits increases, then the top management will get more perks, bonus, ESOPs, something like that they are going to get. So, under this backdrop, because there was some talk by bank's board bureau chief with regard to performance linked pay to the top bank management. So, in this backdrop, this is written align banks' interest with those of bankers, right. So, here align banks' interest with those of bankers. Bankers means top management of bank, you can say, or management of bank. Banks means commercial banks, what you know, you and I know, and align means the interests of both should be aligned. The interests of both banks as a financial institution as well as the bankers, that means employees, or you can say management, they should be aligned. Align in the meaning is the government, any government's goal is to ensure development so that the downtrodden people will come up. The intention of the government is to bring the people below poverty line above. So, the government's policies, or you can say the governance aspects, must be aligned with the social development, equity and growth. Equity means the growth should reach all sections of society, it should not be concentrated to only few, and growth. The growth is, all of you are familiar with the GDP. So, here the governance aspects must be aligned with the social development. So, align means with some particular purpose, the purpose should converge. That means the goals should be in such a way to achieve some desired purpose. So, here align banks' interest with those of bankers. Both of them must be aligned. You should not see it in isolation. When bankers are given more perks, when bankers are given more bonus, when bankers are given more this stock ownership plans, then ultimately that should benefit the banks also. That is the meaning of alignment. It is welcome that the government is considering reform of public sector bankers' pay, and stock options and bonuses are being examined. It is a welcome step. Now, public sector banks' pay, stock options, bonuses are being examined. Stock options means the certain section of employees, or you can say the persons associated with increasing the profitability of the banks will be given bonus as well as stock options. What is the meaning of stock options? They will be given shares of the banks, that is the stock options. So, here if you look at ESOPs, basically stock options means employee stock ownership plans, employee stock ownership plans, or ESOPs. This word is quite commonly you come across in passages. ESOPs means employee stock ownership plans. I have given 4 companies here, and sometimes in the remuneration package of the employees, shares are also given while offering employment. In addition to the usual pay, these shares are also given, which is known as ESOPs or employee stock ownership plans. That means a benefit plan in which employees own a percentage of their company's shares, right. And next word is bonus. All of you are familiar with bonus. This is given as a reward for good work. When some good work is there, reward, this bonus is just reward for good work, and all of you are familiar with Indian Railways, which announces bonus every year. So, bonus means it is the compensation or monetary, maybe something else, given as reward for good work, right. So, here let us come back to the paragraph. It is welcome option that government is considering reform of public sector bankers' pay and stock options and bonuses are being examined, right. So, government is considering these additional facilities to the government public sector bank employees. You can say public sector bank employees, some thought is going on. Banking culture has to change dramatically, particularly in the public sector. Actually, banking culture has to change dramatically. Dramatic, what is the meaning? Please look into this. Tamil Nadu politics took a dramatic turn as Sisikala Natarajan was convicted in disproportionate assets case. So, some sudden or unexpected thing to happen or full of action and excitement. So, in this particular case, this banking culture has to change totally, right, and particularly in the public sector. So, particularly means especially or more than usual or more importantly, you can say. Here I have given one example. Our English teacher is very particular when it comes to punctuation marks, right. So, let us come back to the paragraph. Banking culture has to change dramatically, particularly in the public sector, and the only way to attract and retain top talent is to reward them as well as alternative employment would. If alternative employment means under normal circumstances in private sector bank or other financial institutions, if they are doing good work, they will get lot many rewards. So, similarly, public sector banks also have to change dramatically, particularly in the public sector, and the only way to attract and retain top talent is to reward them, right. So, this is what is meant by reward. Reward means basically an advantage either in the form of money or in the form of shares or in the form of promotions, to recognize hard work or good work. So, that is the literal meaning of reward. Bank employees should be suitably rewarded for successful handling of demonetization. Subsequent to demonetization, bank employees worked up to midnight. So, they should be suitably rewarded. So, reward has got the meaning of advantage in the form of money, stocks or promotions. Look at the next paragraph. Bankers, that means bank management, would abandon underhand methods of enriching themselves if open, transparent mechanisms are instituted to reward them for sound decisions and the hard work that must necessarily precede the hard work. So, what is the meaning of this sentence? Bankers, at present some of the bankers are resorting to some corrupt practices, underhand deals. What is the meaning of underhand deal? Underhand deal is corrupt practice. If this suitable rewards are announced in the beginning or in advance, then this bankers would abandon underhand deals or corruption practices. Abandon means here to stop an activity before it is finished or withdrawing through halfway. All of you are familiar with Tata Nano project. Tata Group abandoned Nano car project in West Bengal. Abandoned means leaving it midway or telling altogether goodbye to one practice is abandon, and at the same time underhand. What is the underhand? This word you come across quite often. Underhand means dishonestly, illegally. If something is getting some money dishonestly, illegally, you have to say underhand. So, underhand deals of some politicians are adversely affecting the progress of our country. Then enrich. Enrich means to improve the quality of something by adding something else. By improving the quality of something, fertilizers enrich the soil. One example is, with fertilizers, soil will be enriched, and in the company of good people, your morale will be enriched, your thought process will be enriched. Similarly, my life was greatly enriched after my interaction with English professor. So, enrichment means to improve quality of something, right. So, we have discussed opaque, transparent. Government deals must be transparent. Opacity should not be there. So, if you go back to this particular paragraph, look at this paragraph. Bankers would abandon, they leave everything, underhand methods, corruption practices of enriching themselves. So far what they are doing? They are getting money through illegal means to enrich themselves, and if suitable rewards are announced in advance, they will abandon corruption, right. If open, transparent mechanisms are instituted to reward them for sound decisions and the hard work that must necessarily precede the hard work. This announcement must come first. Before hard work, before producing some results for the banking system, this announcement should come first. That is the meaning of the hard work that must necessarily precede the hard work, right. So, suitable rewards must be announced in advance, so that the corrupt practices of bankers will go away. They will abandon corrupt practices. So far they are enriching themselves than banks through corrupt practices. All these things will go away, right. So, this article is specifically talking about give more rewards for bankers, so that the output of the banking system will increase, right. Look at the next paragraph. It would be useful for the Banks Board Bureau. Banks Board Bureau is headed by Vinod Rai, and that is constituted to take some important decisions with regard to the health of public sector banks. Please do not forget. So, it would be useful for the Banks Board Bureau and the government to take on board some guidelines. Yesterday we discussed about on board. On board means everyone as part or as a team, as a group or as a team, everyone is mobilized with some particular goal. So, that is the meaning of on board. So, village level government administration must be taken on board to make Swachh Bharat a success. So, here some guidelines issued by G20 and Financial Stability Board in 2009 on this subject must be taken on board. That means must be considered, right. So, here you may have a doubt about G20. G20 is the group of developed and developing countries. There are 19 countries and European Union, total 20, that is why it is called G20. What is the purpose of G20? G20, in fact, it was established in 1999. Its main purpose is high level discussion on global economy. On key issues of global economy, high level discussions takes place during every year's summit of G20. At the same time, Financial Stability Board. Financial Stability Board was established based on the recommendations of G20. And what is the task given to Financial Stability Board? Financial Stability Board, the main task is about global financial system. It gives recommendations about global financial system, headquarters in Basel, Switzerland, right. So, the recommendations of G20 and Financial Stability Board must be taken on board. Basically, it would be useful. That is this paragraph. Look at the next paragraph. There has to be a clear distinction. Distinction. Please look at this example. Distinction means difference between two similar things. Distinction, difference between two similar things. I have given one example. It is difficult to draw a clear distinction between meanings of two different words in English language. Meanings of two different words in English language. This hair, hair, sore, sore. So, there are similar words, but there is a distinct difference. So, distinction means difference between two similar things. So, it is difficult to draw a clear distinction between the meanings of two different words in English language. And at the same time, another word is there, material impact. Material impact means it should be measurable impact, physical impact. So, that is the meaning of material impact. I have given one example. Reducing corruption will have material impact over the welfare of the people. If corruption is reduced, then quality of people's life will increase, and it is measurable, and it will have physical impact over the lives of the people. So, material impact, please understand carefully. So, reducing corruption will have material impact over the welfare of the people. Now, here there has to be a clear distinction, clear bifurcation, clear differentiation between employees whose work has a material impact on the performance of the bank and the rest. So, the bifurcation is to be made among the employees, because some employees can make some difference in the banking system, and some employees there will not be any role. A computer operator may not have any role in improving productivity to much extent. To certain extent, increasing the productivity of the organization and taking important decisions, some of the bankers will come into picture. So, the point what he want to mention is there should be clear distinction between employees whose work has a material impact on the performance of the bank and the rest. So, they have to differentiate the employees, they have to make a distinction between the employees, and all the rewards are to be given for the employees who can make a material impact on the banking system, right. So, let us look at the next paragraph. Corporate governance and regulatory and capital adequacy considerations must inform compensation decisions. Corporate governance and regulatory and capital adequacy considerations must inform compensation decisions. So, for compensation decisions to be taken, two important aspects are this corporate governance as well as capital adequacy, right. So, corporate governance means basically the way in which a company is managed by the top management, that is corporate governance. So, corporate governance means the way in which a company is managed by the top management. All of you are familiar with Infosys, Tata Sons. There is lot of boardroom battle going on, and Infosys, if you look at, there is lot of difference between, or you can say there is a lot of fight going on between the founders and the present board. So, the recent incidents of Infosys and Tata Sons indicate that there is an urgent need for stringent corporate governance norms. So, corporate governance means the way the company is run by the top management is corporate governance. Then capital adequacy ratio means how much bank capital with regard to risk weighted assets. Assets means loans in the banking system, and each and every loan has got different risk. Each and every loan has got different risk. The loan, personal loan has got more risk in comparison to housing loan. Accordingly, these loans are measured by giving risk weights. So, that is risk weighted assets, and in the numerator capital is there. So, capital means how much money bank has. So, the ratio of capital and risk weighted assets expressed in percentage is capital adequacy ratio. It should be 9% as per Basel III norms, right. So, here let us come back to the passage. Here corporate governance, that means how the company is run, and regulatory and capital adequacy considerations must inform compensation decisions. Compensation is used in two types. One is, look into this example left side. Here there was a fire accident. Subsequently, the persons or the families affected will be paid compensation. So, this is one type of using compensation, that is money paid for damages. If some accident occurs, then compensation may be paid by the government. If some natural calamity occurs, compensation is paid by the government, and compensation is used in some other context also. Basically, it is combination of payments and other benefits that an employee receives for doing their job. So, compensation, but most of the times instead of compensation, people use remuneration. Remuneration is normally the right word. Compensation means, legally speaking, compensation is the amount which we pay for the damages. Legal meaning is compensation, we pay for the damages, but compensation is also used to indicate combination of payments and other benefits. Annual compensation of Google employees includes salary, bonus and ESOPs. So, like this also you can use the word compensation. So, let us go back to the paragraph. Here the paragraph says, corporate governance and regulatory and capital adequacy considerations must inform compensation decisions. Banks must disclose compensation decisions. Banks must disclose compensation decisions. Disclose means to make it public. Disclose means to make it public. So, banks must disclose compensation decisions. These must be made public and reported to regulators. Regulators means just like Reserve Bank of India. So, in advance, the compensation decisions, or you can say remuneration decisions, must be given in advance, and they should be made open and they should be made known to everybody. If you achieve this much, you will get this much. If you achieve this much, you will get this much. That should be the compensation or remuneration package. 2/5 to 3/5 of the remuneration of senior managers, that means 40% to 60% of the total remuneration of the senior managers, whose decisions have a material impact on the working of the bank. I have already explained what is meant by material impact. Material impact means how it improves the organization. It should be in measurable terms. Capital adequacy ratio is improved, then non-performing assets are reduced. These are measurable decisions which will have material impact on the banking system. So, 40% to 60% of the remuneration of senior managers whose decisions have a material impact on the working of the bank must be as a variable component. So, the fixed component will be 40% to 60% and another 40% to 60% must be variable component for the senior management, right. The variable component should be deferred for at least 3 years. Deferred means postponed. Variable component must not be paid immediately. It should be deferred. Why it is deferred? It is deferred because of the reason bank's performance and bank's efficiency will not be known immediately. In the subsequent 2-3 years, it will be known. So, the variable component should be deferred for at least 3 years and paid out mostly linked to bank stocks to align individual and bank interests. The interests, as I have told you in the beginning, align means not only the bank's interests, bankers' interests, both should be aligned. When you are paying something more to the bank senior management, basically it should reflect in the bank's working, or it should reflect in the parameters of the banking system. So, it has to be waited for 3 years and subsequently it is to be paid, right. So, we learnt about corporate governance, capital adequacy ratio, compensation, disclose, remuneration. Remuneration, the exact meaning is paid to the employee for the work done to the organization. It is in the form of monetary or non-monetary. Monetary means in the form of money, non-monetary means maybe in the form of good perks like insurance, health benefits. All those things will come under non-monetary benefits. So, the remuneration package can include both these things. So, the remuneration package for senior management of Facebook is quite attractive, that is the example. Then liberal incentives, previous paragraph talked about liberal incentives. Must have not just deferral, must have not just deferral. In the previous paragraph he stated this should be deferred by 3 years. It should be paid after 3 years, not only paying after 3 years, but also, that means the second point, but also it should have clawback provisions built into them, so that when a time bomb on the bank's books goes off, suppose non-performing assets increased after 4 years because of the decision taken today by the bank management, because of some loan of 1000 crores given today because of a faulty decision. If it becomes a non-performing asset after 5 years or 4 years, that is the meaning of this. When a time bomb on the bank's books goes off, when the time bomb on the bank's books goes off, at a time when time bomb on the bank's books goes off, those, that means the persons, the management at the time who lit its slow fuse, fuse, all of you are familiar with the fuse, that means lighting the fuse means immediately it will burst. So, somebody might have lit it and it has taken 4-5 years to become non-performing asset, and that person must be held responsible. So, the meaning here is not only deferring the payment of this variable pay after 3-4 years, it also must have clawback provisions. Clawback provisions means whatever you are giving, you should take it back. Today, some compensation, or you can say some remuneration was paid to bank officer, and after 3 years that loan has gone bad. Because of his bad decision, it has gone bad. Under those circumstances, whatever variable compensation paid to the bank officer must be taken back. Because of his faulty decision long ago, now the bank is facing the problem, right. So, clawback means this is the situation in which a government or company takes back money that it has already paid. This variable remuneration already paid, and the clause is inbuilt where the government or company can take it back. That is the meaning of clawback. So, public sector enterprises should give liberal incentives, but clawback provisions also, right. So, here is, so liberal incentives must not just have deferral clause, but also clawback provisions built into them, so that when a time bomb on the bank's books goes off, those who lit its slow fuse would pay. Those who lit its slow fuse, that means because of faulty decision 4-5 years ago, now bank is suffering. That is why clawback provision must be there. The compensation paid must be taken back, right, even long after they have left the bank. Because of their faulty decisions, if something goes wrong in future, maybe after 5 years, even after their retirement, that money should be taken back. That is clawback clause. Experts and independent reviewers must be engaged to design and monitor bankers' pay. So, bankers' pay must be variable, and it should be linked with the progress of the bank, or you can say profitability of the bank. Third point is, it should also have clawback provisions, right. Here it would be useful to bring in similar guidelines for private sector banks too. Private sector banks also similar guidelines can be brought. If that is the case, that would mean limiting the scope of union bargaining for pay and allowances to the ranks of the junior staff and workers in departments whose working does not materially affect bank performance. So, if this is implemented for private sector banks also, then unions may not have bargaining power. The basic problem is, if the top management is given variable pay and perks, then naturally immediately unions will also come into picture. They will ask for increasing the pay of junior level staff, and to avoid that, private sector banks also similar provisions of giving pay at the higher level, that means for the top management who are in a position to take decisions, and because of whose decisions banks profitability increases. So, this point says that would mean limiting the scope of union bargaining for pay and allowances to the ranks of the junior staff and workers in departments whose working does not materially affect bank performance. Restructuring bankers' pay, in other words, calls for expertise, transparency, and above all political will. And most important, above all means most important is political will. So, what is required here? Restructuring of bankers' pay. What is meant by restructuring? Restructuring means basically organizing a company to make it operate more effectively. So, restructuring of bank management pay. That means, example you see here, there is a need for restructuring the software firms in view of the global challenges. There are so many challenges globally in software sector. So, there is a need for restructuring the software firms in view of the global challenges. Similarly here, restructuring bankers' pay is to be restructured, and in other words calls for expertise. Expertise means a skill. Without skill you cannot do anything. So, expertise means high level of knowledge or skill. Expertise should not be used normally. Expertise indicates high level of knowledge or skill. In India, there is a sufficient expertise available in space research. ISRO is one of the world recognized institutions. You can say in India there is sufficient expertise available in space research, right. So, I have already told you transparent. This word you come across quite often in the paragraphs. So, you should have a clear idea about opaque and transparent. Government decisions must be transparent, not opaque. So, here for restructuring bankers' pay calls for expertise, that means high skill is required. If you implement without knowledge or skill, then what happens? Ultimately that goes waste. Then transparency, everything will be should be transparent. If a bank's parameters go up to this extent, you will get this much. So, everything should be linked with performance, and above all, for implementing or for restructuring this type of decisions requires political will. Most important is political will. Above all, when you are using above all, that means most important in consider when you consider it or when you compare it other aspects is a political will, right. So, this is all about this align bank's interest with those of bankers, and we came to end of this today's editorial, and today's editorial is let us not rush into more bank mergers. This is with regard to merger of State Bank of associate banks with State Bank of India, and we are going to deliberate this on 20th February Monday at 12 noon. Right friends, with this let us conclude today's comprehension and vocabulary. Have a nice day. Thank you.